everyone, welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about comic book covers and why they're effective. And some of these are going to be a little biased for me, in my opinion, and then some of them are just world renowned covers. For instance, Incredible Hulk 340, cover by Todd McFarlane. Why is this cover so effective? Well, let's look at it. Now, in my opinion, first off, this is the best title card that the Incredible Hulk has ever had on any issue whatsoever. It's just awesome because it looks like something that the Hulk's going to break. Secondly, this is kind of around the time where McFarlane actually was able to finally start to ink himself. Because if you look in some of the earlier issues, you'll notice that he wasn't, and it didn't look like Todd. It didn't look like his artwork. It looked like someone who was kind of being lazy and not really doing all the line work and, trying to figure out some sort of happy medium with it. But in my opinion, when Todd is inking himself, then that's when he looks the best. And this cover is clearly like it because all the little noodling on Wolverine's face here is pretty much, given that Todd inked himself on this one. But why is this cover so effective? Well, first off, Wolverine and Hulk are actually a lot alike, right? They're both berserker characters. They're both, fight through anger and have a lot of anger issues. And whether Todd subconsciously did this or not, the reflection of the claws that show the Hulk's face is a reflection of Wolverine himself, in my opinion. That they're both these angry killing machines. And I don't know, that's just the way I've always seen it. I think that's what drew me to the cover of this issue and, why I've always thought that people have voted this as one of the best comic book covers of all time because it's just a representation of themselves. You're seeing the reflective representation. And, on top of that, Todd's just a phenomenal artist. He's one of the best, in my opinion. But that's the first issue I wanted to look at. And, let me know what you think. I think this is definitely, it's got to be top 50 comic book covers of all time. I'll throw a broad spectrum there. But if they went back to the way this Hulk title looked, the card here, the title card, I think it would help propel the fact that they're going back to a style that, people have fond memories of. Nostalgia's pretty big right now. So Hulk 340, top 50 covers of all time, has to be. And let's just stick with Todd and here for a second, and even Rob Liefeld. Sorry, I'm still getting over a cold. That's why videos have been taking so long to come out. But New Mutants 88, I always adored this cover. This is a biased cover for me, even though I'm not a huge Liefeld fan and more of a McFarlane fan. When they came together for this, I was all in for a couple reasons. So this is kind of the cliche comic book, even one of the first comic books I ever got in my life was like a Fantastic Four cover drawn by George Perez. You have comic book characters lying in decay like there was some big battle going on. And then that's the cliche part of it. But the part that kind of drawed me into this is specifically the use of the Blob and how they portray him in this cover, because you don't really think of a guy called the Blob pulling a sneak attack on, a future warrior like Cable. So it's kind of telling a story here. You know what I mean? That there's a blob of a guy sneaking up on one of the most renowned killing machines of the future that's come to our time. And, at this time as well, I mean, because we're close to New Mutants 100, Cable was such a huge character, like nobody knew his past. They didn't know anything about him. Who's he going to be? Like, who's he connected to in the X-Men? So you've got a cliche here at the bottom. Then you've got an oddity here of the Blob lining up a surprise attack on Cable. And there's a story to be told. And not only that, but just the use of colors here, the purple background. I've always adored the New Mutants title card. It's just a really, really great piece of work by, I think Todd inked it for Liefeld. If I'm not mistaken, I think Liefeld drew it, then Todd inked over it, which I think helps propel this into being such a great cover. But let's see. Up next, Spider-Man's coming back from the grave? What? Yeah, one of the most famous covers of all. Web of Spider-Man 32. The 6-part saga with Kraven the Hunter basically trying to become Spider-Man. He says he's his greatest foe. He's always lost to him. He doesn't understand why. Well, no more. He's taken him out and he's going to kill him. And he actually does bury him alive. It's not 100% like written out as to what's going on. Like in the story, does Spider-Man die and come back to life? Is there really a resurrection? He's just buried. Kraven eats a shit ton of spiders, like it looks like it, and then you can't tell if it's real or not. And then he dresses up as Black Suit Spider-Man. So there's a lot going on in this cover. It's been parodied before by Jason Voorhees and a bunch of other things. I'll put like a little thing here. But I think just the overall look of the way the downward shot going up of showing the grave, here lies Spider-Man, the rain cascading down, drizzling down, and the use of color and the grays and whites of the dirt and him coming out of the grave like this, plus the black suit is so fuck cool, I think this is why this is just such a great cover, because you don't think of Spider-Man being this dark, and this is such a dark story that it basically pulls you in. Why would Spider-Man be coming out of a grave, And the lightning here, the little lightning bolt, everything about it is just so peculiar, and it just makes you question, like, I gotta own this. I gotta figure out what's going on in this story. Resurrection? Spider-Man died? Even if it is part 4, you're still coming in to be out of curiosity at this cover, and that's what I think it is. It's a curious cover. Moving on to the next one. So these Jim Belant covers on Catwoman, I just want to say is what got me into wanting to read Catwoman. It was simply Jim Balent's art. He drew Catwoman's body. The way he's drawn it is probably one of my favorite figure works of all time in comic books. Catwoman's figure here is just phenomenal. I think this is like the perfect way to draw the female form in action superhero comics. You're not getting like a Love and Rockets Jaime, different types of female forms, not the superhero one here, but like in that Love and Rockets, you're getting like a more idealized version of different progression of ages forms for women. And Jaime is one of the best, but in Balent's case, this is what drew me in. I was like, man, like this is my favorite Catwoman suit. This is the one I grew up with. Her form, specifically her form, and the way he did all the covers, and I'll show like a smattering of them right here. They just worked, and he used her form, in my opinion, to sell these books, to push Catwoman as something not only sexy but heroic and tough that little boys like me could get into. And I will forever be grateful for his work. And he doesn't work in comics specifically anymore, as far as I could tell. And a lot of people said that he over sexualized females to the point where it was ridiculous. And in my opinion, it's like, well, these are fictional forms of characters. They're idealized fictional forms. It'd be kind of weird if you're trying to shoot for not being perfect at being able to sketch a figure, because that's what you've worked towards this whole time, is being able to draw perfectly idealized figures that represent superheroic forms. And I never understood that argument. And I think this is a good argument for that, in my opinion, is seeing this form here and drawing my, little boy's eye in to the sexy form of a female, and then, seeing how badass she is on each of these covers. And these comics are actually pretty damn good. So they're written by Duffy. So I would go and check them out and decide for yourself. Plus they're cheap. See, $2. So I'm usually against these type of covers, usually. And that is a more realistic cover. We don't really need realism in comic books all the time. I think the best cartooning is when it's more cartoonish. Something like a Greg Capullo or a Todd McFarlane. Excuse me. But for some reason, the way that this person, excuse me, Pelletier, or is it Ratman or Belair? I actually didn't check who did the cover. I'm sorry. I'll put it right here. But the way they did this cover and the painting and just her reaction and Babs's green eyes in this, and the pink on her cheeks, and the way her lips, her hair, everything, the way it looks, the red and the orangish red brown hair, and this Batgirl suit. This was always how I imagined Batgirl to look like in real life. If she was you know, if you had to encapsulate the way she looked into a real person, this is how it looks like. And what's funny too is that my aunt Robin, she kind of looks like this. So I was like, oh, it looks like my aunt a little bit, but um, yeah, that's what I think works for this cover. It drew me in. In fact, when it came out, I just kept looking at it and looking at it in the comic shop. And I was like, man, that's like a perfectly realized Batgirl. And it's everything I ever wanted out of a Batgirl. And I didn't buy it. I was like, I don't read Batgirl too often. Maybe I should in the future. I'll get, a trade or something. But I just didn't buy it. And then years later, I want to say like a year later, probably, because this isn't that old. I went and got it. I looked at a comic shop and I said, you know what? I'm just gonna get that cover. Still remembered it, and I got it for $5. And yeah, it's one of my favorite covers of Batgirl that I've ever seen. Next up, kind of more of an iconic cover. Bam. Superman Dead. And this is kind of going back to what I remember, back in the day of when I first started experiencing new comics, because my dad had given me his old comics to read, which were from the 70s. And I had gotten Death of Superman early on. I was like probably 8 years old, 10, something like that, when we started reading it. And this picture kind of encapsulates the feeling to me of, how iconic that moment felt as a kid, because you're seeing Superman dead, and it's like, but Superman doesn't die. Superman is Superman. And everyone knows and complains now, especially people in the industry back then, that this was just a gimmick. This was just bullshit. Of course he was going to return, and he does return, but to me it's like, well, so did Jean Grey, like so did so many other characters that we thought were dead that would always come back to life. And in comics, I know it's even worse now, but back then they tried to take it slightly more seriously. But that this was a big moment. Even if he was coming back, it was still a big moment to make the biggest out of the DC superhero lineup take that fall and bite it essentially and eat it. And to me, this was just a huge moment of my life, and this image will always stick with me. This and the one where the cape is on the like piece of rubble sticking out, the piece of wood, and it's blowing in the wind. I'll put it here, but those two things together, it was just like, man, this is such a huge moment in comic book history, and millions of people bought into it. I mean, they really thought Superman was dead, but of course we know he wasn't. All right, another one here, and I think nobody will be surprised by this at all. Love and Rockets #1. Why is it iconic? I mean, just look at it. You just see it and you're like, I want to buy this. Like, whoa, this is cool. So a couple things to note. First off, this isn't the first time this was done. People always think that Love and Rockets 1 was the first time that women were kind of like, put into this lineup with the spotlight on them. And it wasn't. I will have to look it up. Maybe I'll put it here if I remember, but I think it was Crumb or somebody else had done it before, and Los Bros Hernandez were, reinterpreting it for their own comic book. And I even did my own interpretation of it on my novel, Super Punks. And, kind of shared the history of putting characters in spotlights. But to me, Love and Rockets #1 is such a special, iconic cover because, it's very few times you see this many females on one cover looking so rad, and there's so many different like emotions going on here, like flattery, like a tribal anger, angst, like the house mom look, staring off into maybe a little shock even, and then just cool, relaxing smoking. And emotions just even in the cartooning of this just run so deep and look so cool, and then you see like a little splatter effect. You're like, what happened there? What's the story? So Love and Rockets 1, definitely iconic, definitely top 50, maybe even less, of comic book covers of all time. And I go through these, and I had just kind of grabbed some stuff at random, but I want everyone to know that I could have grabbed more, I could have done more, I could have had more going on right now from when I initially grabbed the Hulk, which I knew was gonna the first one that I knew was gonna be in here. But I honestly, I'm still sick. You hear me coughing still. I'm getting over it, and I'm getting over it. And the next video that falls in line after this will be a gigantic video. About 80% finished. I did all of it while I was sick, so I'm a little low energy in the video. But I promise you that it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a matchup that happens in comic books that should have happened in movies. And, anyone that's new to the channel, I try to do big videos at least every couple months, every like 1 or 2 months. And outside of that, we do horror, we do the honest reviews, we do comic books, and then we do video game magazines, and we kind of look back at the past inside of those magazines, and those are all coming. I want to assure everyone that this weekend I'm going to buy some more PlayStation magazines, some more maybe Game Informers or something, some old school 1990s, 1980s magazines, and we'll be going through those again. So this video really was just, I mean, it was an idea I had, and I just want to see how it does. Like, maybe people have their own, comments to say on these, and please let me know in the comments below. We're almost to 100 subscribers. I'm so freaking excited about that. I want to thank you guys for like being a part of this journey with me and just hanging out and, talking comics and everything. It really matters a lot to me that people are giving this channel a chance, and that's why I'm working so hard to do these videos for you guys. So I'm sorry I'm sick. I took 2 weeks off, and then at the end of the second week I just happened to get sick. So thanks everyone for supporting the channel. We'll be back with more. I'm gonna go rest my throat and not ramble on anymore. Thanks everyone, and please, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever it is you celebrate. I'll see you in the new year. Bye.